Hey guys, Batman is speaking here, and before I start this video, don't forget to leave a comment. Your comment will help my video get a lot of engagement on the platform. This anime follows the life of Arata Hinohara, who was a depressed high school student who used to be a talented athlete, but he was betrayed and bullied by his best friend in high school. Since then, he has been unable to live freely, because the trauma of this betrayal has remained firmly in his mind, just like the trauma that a girl with short hair usually leaves in men. But everything changes when one day he switches places with another person from a parallel world, and is immediately thrust into a battle in which only the winner can survive. This forces him to face his fears, and he becomes one of the strongest heroes in the world. But before all this happened, he was just a coward, because the constant bullying from his best friend in high school, Masado, had completely broken him. He was getting a little more excited thanks to the new friend he made in high school. But when he saw his new best friend talking to some bullies about how he was never Arata's friend, his heart broke, and Arata became even more depressed. He lost all faith in others, and thought that he could never trust anyone again. He just wanted to disappear from this world. Meanwhile, in another world, another boy, also named Arata, is running away from home. His grandmother tells him to give up running away and accept his fate, but Arata Roman II refuses to pretend to be a woman, because he considers himself a homophobic boy, so he would never be able to be a cross-dresser, and his grandmother, enraged because he is talking back, attacks him with a magic attack, and he falls into the sea. He is later rescued by his grandmother, who tells him that he has no choice but to live as a woman from now on, and become the next ruling princess of the kingdom. It turns out that their kingdom is always ruled by a princess with magical powers, and the princess is always chosen by their clan, and the current princess is already old. This is because many decades have passed, and his clan has not had a girl to replace her. So Arata's grandmother declared that he was a girl when he was born, and now he must become the next ruling princess. He tells her that this is impossible, because only women can use magic in this world, and that is one of the most important criteria for becoming a ruling princess. However, his grandmother tells him that if he does not become the next princess, his entire clan will be purged for failing to fulfill their duty. She also tells Arata to swallow his pride and become a woman so that he can protect his entire clan and his divine weapon. Arata too then picks up the rusty sword and starts playing with it, saying that it is just a piece of trash and not a divine weapon. His grandmother yells at him, but suddenly she has a stroke, and upon seeing her like this, Arata starts laughing. Just kidding, he really has no choice but to act like a woman for the sake of his clan. The next day, Arata gets into a carriage with his personal servant, Kadoha, who explains that the princess subdues the gods of this world who reside in Sword. The current princess has already ruled for 2 terms, totaling 60 years, and is very old. Unfortunately, this lecture does not help Arata feel better, and he continues to feel horrible about having dressed as a woman, and what he wants most is to disappear from this world completely. To help him feel better, Kadoha takes off her clothes. In fact, she only gives him a good luck charm, which she got from Princess Kikiri. When he served her in the past, this gesture cheers Arata up, and he says he will do whatever it takes to fool Kikiri and her guards. The next day, he goes to the capital and enters the gigantic tower, which is the residence of the ruling princess. Arata also goes to the top of the tower and finds himself surrounded by the shrines of the 12 guardians, who are the strongest warriors in the kingdom, and also the loyal guards of the princess. Suddenly, Princess Kikiri comes to greet him to begin the ceremony, and Arata too is surprised to see that the princess is not an old witch as he imagined, but rather a humble little cat. Arata too also discovers that Kikiri is a humble, kind, and pleasant person, and he now does not want to betray her trust. But suddenly, one of her 12 guards jumps into the air and strikes her. She is devastated by the betrayal of the man, named Kanagi, and attacks him with a magical blast, but is too weak to do any damage. The princess falls to the ground and uses the last of her energy to preserve her body. Soon after, Kanagi discovers that the next princess is a man. He planned to kill the next princess no matter what, whether she is a man or a woman. Arata panics and asks the 12 guardians to do something because the princess they are supposed to protect has just died, but it turns out that each of them is a traitor. Suddenly, Kanagi also attacks Arata, who somehow dodges the attack and then jumps into the pool below. When the green flames at the top of the tower go out, the audience panics and Kanagi tells everyone that the princess was killed by a man named Arata. He blatantly lies, saying that Arata pretended to be a woman in order to get close to her without raising suspicion. Kanagi mobilizes the entire army to hunt down Arata, who who runs through the city shirtless to get to a safe place. Desperate, he heads to the forest, which is known to be a feared place that consumes the minds of those who enter it. Arata can't stop thinking about the 12 guardians who betrayed the princess, when suddenly the forest starts to echo with strange noises. Arata also wonders what is happening, and at the same time, Arata-1 also hears someone calling his name. For a brief moment, they find themselves floating in the sky, and then they are swapped for each other. Now Arata-1 finds himself in a forest, unable to understand what just happened or where he is. And just as he leaves the forest and looks at the tower, a quick arrow almost hits him. Kanagi and some soldiers are there to capture him, because to them he also looks like Arata-2. Arata-1 takes cover in the trees to avoid the arrows, and suddenly he is teleported somewhere. Out of nowhere, Kadoha jumps on him, because she also believes he is Arata-2. She says she is very happy that he is okay, but Arata asks her who she is. She replies that this is no time for jokes, and grabs his hand, leading him safely to the village. When they reach the village, Kadoha reveals that everyone believes that Grandma Kikiri is dead, and that it was Arata who killed her. Arata's grandmother is shocked, and Kadoha tells her that Arata also lost his memories after entering the cursed forest. This further frightens Grandma, who takes Arata to a secret base, where he reveals that he is from another world. She believes him because the legend of that forest says that those who enter and return from the forest are always completely changed, and this may be because they are all replaced by someone else from a different world. Arata is shocked to hear this, and asks if he can go back, but she refuses, saying that he must also live as Arata now. Arata refuses to live as a wanted criminal, but Grandma is firm in saying that her grandson would never commit a crime like that. Arata is going crazy thinking about his life, which is full of constant suffering, when suddenly, his grandmother hears Kadoha scream. She goes outside and discovers that Kanagi has taken her hostage, and is now demanding that the old woman hand over Arata if she wants the girl to live. The old woman claims she knows nothing, so Kanagi tortures Kadoha, asking if she really wants to die protecting a criminal. She screams that she believes Arata did not kill the princess either, and these words shake Arata to the core. He cannot allow another person's faith to be betrayed. He does not want anyone to go through what he went through, so he sets out to save Kadoha. Kanagi throws Kadoha aside as he orders a soldier to kill him. Arata staggers back and notices a rusty sword lying on the ground. He picks it up to defend himself and pushes the soldier back. Suddenly, the dormant power inside the rusty sword awakens. Arata and Granny realize this, but Kanagi doesn't. He thinks that a divine weapon is useless in the hands of a normal person, so he decides to kill Arata using his sword's fire ability. Arata panics, but since Granny told him to say goodbye inside the sword to appear, he does so, and suddenly a golden barrier appears around him, and the fire from Kanagi's attack begins to be absorbed by it. No one can believe what is happening, with Arata being the most shocked by this sudden discovery. Kanagi's fire power continues to be absorbed continuously, so he decides to interrupt the power of his weapon. Then he states that it is unbelievable that Arata is also a chosen one, and suddenly the damaged roof collapses. After that, while the soldiers search the ruins of the house, they don't find Arata and the others. Now Kanagi is sitting alone, when another of the 12 guardians, named Akashi, arrives and informs him that there has been a change of plan. They want to capture Arata alive, so that they can now put him on trial, and then punish him in front of everyone so that they can succeed in their rebellion. Back in the modern world, Arata's mother and sister are looking for him, but they can't get hold of his phone number. Just then, they see a group of people gathered around someone, talking about a handsome, shirtless man on the street. Arata's mother is a bit of a pervert, so she forgets about her son and goes there to see the handsome man, but she discovers that the handsome man is actually Arata too, who looks exactly like her son. Meanwhile, Arata and the others are in a cave, where Grandma tells Arata that the gods of this world are in divine weapon. The chosen ones can wield these divine weapons and command the power of the gods, and now Arata is one of them. After that, Kadoha gives Arata his favorite food, hoping that his memories will return if he eats it. Arata feels bad for the girl who wants someone he is not so much, and he is sad that she cannot accept the fact that he is a different person. He goes out to get some fresh air, but Konoha also follows him there. She tells Arata that his memory will return, and when he tries to explain that he is a person from a different world, she just nods, as if she believes everything he says. Suddenly, she hugs him from behind, saying that she believes that her master will return. Arata is already nervous, and then Konoha opens his shirt and discovers that the lucky charm she gave him is missing. She asks if he lost it, and despite being upset, she gives him the second charm, the lucky one. Arata then begins to open up to her, when suddenly, Kanagi arrives at the scene and quickly takes Grandma hostage. He tells Arata to surrender or fight him, and Grandma forbids Arata, saying that this is not the time for him to use his weapon, and because of this he is arrested. Kanagi throws him into a carriage that is heading to the prison, and tells him that he will be officially tried for the murder of the princess. Arata screams, saying that he does not even know what is happening, and Kanagi now also begins to think that he lost his memories in the forest, but he does not care about that, because he intends to punish him anyway. Arata stays inside the carriage, unable to do anything, when suddenly, his lucky charm starts to glow, and projects a video on the wall, showing Arata 2 in his room. The two boys are shocked to see this, and Arata tries to return to his room through the portal, but he hits his head on the wooden carrot. Finally, the two Aratas realize and accept that they have switched worlds. Arata 1 asks Arata 2 why he killed the princess, and he replies that he is being framed for a crime that Kanagi committed, and that all of the other 12 guardians of the princess are involved. He states that the princess looked devastated when the bastards betrayed her, and he will never forgive them. Arata is shocked to hear this, and decides to trust Arata 2. Arata 2 then asks if Konoha and Bobo are okay, and Arata replies that they were not arrested. Arata 2 is relieved, and asks him to take care of them. Furthermore, Arata also reveals that the divine sword has awakened, and Arata 2 is excited that now someone can fight against the 12 guardians. They promise each other that they will try to find a way to return things to normal, but suddenly, the portal begins to shrink. At that moment, Arata's mother also begins to come to his room in the modern world. Arata tries to call her, but to no avail, as the portal closes. The next day, a grand jury is convened to decide Arata's punishment. The 12 guardians act as prosecutors and witnesses, and incriminate Arata of having killed the princess while disguising himself as a woman. They show a photo of the princess, who is hanging by a thread between life and death. The jury is furious upon seeing this, and immediately demands that the criminal be sentenced to death without any trial. Kanagi silences them, and says that the 12 guardians failed to protect the princess, and that they are deeply saddened by this. Arata is furious upon hearing this, and tells Kanagi to stop with the nonsense. He calls the 12 guardians traitors and murderers, saying that they are worse than the scum. He asks everyone if they didn't feel bad when they attacked the princess, who trusted them with her life. Suddenly, the Akat warrior sends his spear towards Arata, and asks how he can lie about the fact that the 12 guardians injured the princess when they are still grieving over her death. The other elite warriors do the same, and despite it being a very poor attempt at acting, they manage to convince the jury. Now that Arata is cornered by everyone, he remembers how he was bullied in school and gives up. And instead of being executed, he is exiled to a prison island as punishment, and Kanagi wants him to live until he discovers which divine weapon is strong enough to master his sword. Arata is then placed on a prison ship, where he is sent far away, and soon Cotter is thrown into his cell, because she was caught sneaking onto the ship. The guard tells her that she will also be exiled along with her man, but Cotter doesn't care as long as she is by his side. She is trapped with Arata, and thinks that he can break the prison walls using his divine sword. He tries to manifest his power, but nothing happened. Arata then gives up, but suddenly, his lucky charm begins to glow, and he and Cotter are taken to heaven. Suddenly, the spirit of Princess Kikure appears before them, and calls Arata her new guardian. Kikure tells Arata that his words during the trial made her happy, and that she sees in him the hope of creating a stable future for the kingdom. Kikure explains that until now she has used her power to subdue the gods within the divine weapons, so that the same weapons can be used for the well-being of her kingdom. However, if she dies, the divine weapons will be released, and soon the warrior who wields their power will have his mind dominated with great ambitions that will eventually throw the world into chaos. And that is why Kikure wants Arata to restore the kingdom in her name, and to do so he must take his divine sword to her comatose body, before she loses what little life she has left. Arata is very unsure about this, and says that a weak and untrained boy like him can do nothing. However, Kikure says that she can only trust him for this task. Arata is shocked. and suddenly, he returns to the prison with a bright flash. He then wonders if he can really do what the princess wants him to do, and Kadoha affirms that Kikyo believes in him, and that she believes in him too. She tells him that to begin with, he must keep his divine weapon inside his body, since the chosen ones can do so. Arata finds it quite convenient to keep the sword in his hand, and in the meantime, the ship finally arrives at Prison Island, which does not seem like a pleasant place to live. The guards throw Arata and Kadoha inside with many other criminals. The atmosphere of the place is dark and ominous, but suddenly two random boys arrive and tell Arata that they are the bosses of this prison, so they must give up all their things and clothes. They start to look at Kadoha's body too much, and taking this opportunity, Arata tries to escape from them. The red-haired boy named Ken notices this and immediately attacks him. He injures Arata's hand and knocks him to the ground, asking how someone as weak as him could kill the princess. Before Arata can explain his innocence, the prison begins to shake, and the prisoners are frightened, saying that the time for reckoning has come. They run away, and Arata is confused, since even Ken ran away without finishing the fight. Suddenly, the huge crazy tubes start moving and attack two people, sucking them in. With that, the entire prison goes silent. Arata wonders what is happening when a woman arrives, and tells him that it was an act of Warden Tsuga, who runs this prison. Every day, he chooses two prisoners and eats them, and everyone calls it the time of reckoning. The woman then steals a hairpin from Kadoha, saying that this is the price for giving information. Soon after that, Arata tries to escape from the prison using his sword. He tries to summon its power, but it is completely useless. In the meantime, Konoha finds a hot bath for Arata, and even offers to rub his back. He refuses the offer, but then Kadoha notices his injury and heals it using magic. Arata is curious, so Kadoha tells him that she is from a clan of servants, and the women of her clan have the ability to protect their master. She uses her magic on Arata's head to make him relax, and Arata finally realizes Konoha's devotion to her master, which forced her to come to this prison with him. He thanks her when suddenly the prison begins to shake again, and the ground beneath Kadoha's feet collapses. She falls to the floor below, and Arata is terrified because he couldn't move his body. Even when he was in danger, he still tries to find her and asks the other prisoners if they have seen her, but they have no answer. Arata hides from them when suddenly he encounters the woman from before, who introduces herself as an extra who will soon disappear. She tells Arata that there are rumors that if someone kills the princess's killer, they will be able to return home, but she doesn't think that's true. She then asks where the girl who was with him is, and Arata says he doesn't know and asks her if she knows anything. The woman says she might know, and Arata immediately offers his purse as the price for the information. Then, the woman tells him that the redhead named Ken took it. She gives him the information for free, because she knows what it feels like to lose someone special. She asks Arata to save her friend quickly, because Ken is known for being a big troublemaker. However, Ken and his sworn younger brother Jin are like obedient dogs in front of Kadoha. She thanks them for saving her when she fell, and then Jin runs away so his brother can score a goal with the girl. However, Ken doesn't know what to do with the girl either, so he quickly leaves the room. Outside, he finds Jin unconscious and Arata by his side. Ken thinks that Arata knocked his brother out and attacks him in anger. Arata tries to clear up the misunderstanding, but Ken doesn't listen to him, forcing him to draw his sword. At that moment, Jin wakes up and tells his brother that Arata is not the enemy. Suddenly, a criminal rushes to attack Ken, but Arata knocks him down with a kick. Ken recognizes the man as a member of the rival gang, and then Jin tells him that the gang attacked him and took his ring, but Arata saved him. Ken asks Arata to take care of Jin while he runs to get revenge and get his brother's ring back. Arata takes Jin to the living room, where he tells his story while Kadoha treats him. He was kidnapped by thieves to become one of them, and that's where he met Ken. They quickly became like brothers, but when the gang got into trouble, they sent the two of them to this prison, and his ring was the only reminder of their mother. And Ken had promised Jin that they would make it out of this prison and then return home together. After all this, Arata and Kadoha finally have a chance to talk in private. He tells her that he is ready to help the princess now, and the first thing they need to do is find a way out of the prison. Jin says that this is impossible, because Warden Tsuga is a chosen one with a divine weapon, and they cannot defeat him. Just then, Ken arrives with Jin's ring. He thanks Arata for saving his brother, but but challenges him to a fight again. He believes that hunting Arata will give him a ticket out of this prison. But before they can do anything, the reckoning begins. A hollow pipe descends and kidnaps Ken, while a second one targets Arata. Arata freezes in fear, but Jin pulls it away so that he can be taken with his brother. Arata is shaken by his failure, as he was unable to move in time to save the others once again. However, seeing Jin's actions gives him courage, and he decides to save his brother. He grabs the large pipes that lead upward, believing that there he can find the warden. He knows that this will be dangerous, so he promises to protect Kadoha from everything. Meanwhile, Ken and Jin are on the top floor, tied up by the strong iron pipe. They struggle to free themselves, but the pipes hold them even tighter. Suga declares that he will judge him for his sins and gives them a chance to fight each other, promising to let the survivor go. But Ken refuses to fight his brother. However, Suga tells him that if they don't fight, they will both die. He leaves them in the arena and then gives him his weapons as well. Jin doesn't want to fight, but Ken grabs his weapon and starts attacking him. Arata and Kadoha arrive just in time to see Ken attacking Jin. Arata enters the room, telling Tsuga to stop this madness immediately. The cruel headmaster replies that he will not let anyone interfere with his justice. He attacks Arata with pipes, but he dodges and says that the boys are not bad people. Tsuga just points at Ken, who is frantically attacking Jin. He even tells the boy that he is no longer his brother, and these words remind Arata of his best friend's betrayal. Suddenly, Ken jumps towards Jin to attack him, and he instinctively swings his weapon and hits him. As Ken falls, he remembers the last time he met Jin in the thieves' den. He had just been taken from his mother and was crying his eyes out, but Ken promised to take him back to his mother to calm him down. Now he can only hope that Jin survives and escapes, and Arata realizes that Ken sacrificed himself for his brother. However, Tsuga arrests Jin instead of freeing him, saying that he is a criminal for attempted murder. Arata is furious that Tsuga was just playing with his emotions, so he draws his sword in anger and cuts the pipes to free Jin. Suddenly, a giant pipe attacks Arata, and he clings to it. He falls from the top and continues to get hit, but he still stands his ground somehow. Everyone else watches the fight as well, and then Tsuga asks Arata how he can face him if he doesn't even know how to use his weapon. Kadoha screams his name, and Arata suddenly remembers his promise to always protect her. He asks his divine weapon for its true power, and suddenly, a golden light radiates from his sword, leaving everyone in the prison dazed. Arata stands in his golden barrier, and the pipes around him begin to disintegrate the moment he gets close to them. Tsuga attacks Arata with all his power, but a single blow from Arata neutralizes his attack and exposes the true body of the warden who was beneath the island the entire time. He is just an old man, with pipes sticking out of his body and a black weapon stabbing his stomach. Arata thinks the poor man is suffering, so he tries to free him, but the moment he holds his black sword, he sees Tsuga's path. He was a kind, gentle, and kind person, and he treated criminals with compassion, telling them to rethink their actions and completely change their lives in order to get out of prison. However, a man he trusted betrayed him because he thought Tsuga despised him. He cut him up and threw him into the volcano before stabbing him with his divine weapon. Because of this betrayal, Tsuga completely changed and turned into a demon. Pipes began to come out of his body, killing the traitor and turning this prison into this crazy, bizarre thing full of pipes. Tsuga's twisted mind decided to never trust anyone again and used his power to imprison everyone in a hell of his own making. Arata finally understands why Tsuga became this way, but the old warden thinks he can't understand him. Tsuga asks Arata to finish him off, and even the prisoners hope that Arata will kill the old man. However, Arata calms his weapon and tries to remove the sword that binds Tsuga's body. The dark aura of the sword begins to spread towards Arata, filling his mind with rage and hatred towards those who betrayed him. Arata screams in anguish as tears stream down his face, but he vows to save Tsuga at all costs. He pulls out the sword and falls to his knees. The old warden asks him why he went so far to save him, and Arata replies saying that it was because they were both betrayed and hurt, but he still wants to trust and help others. Tsuga is moved by his words, and thanks Arata for freeing him from all this darkness. Suddenly, the sword returns to its original form, and Tsuga reveals that it houses a certain god of this world within it. He begins to disintegrate, and then enters his sword which explodes with golden energy. Tsuga tells Arata that he submits to his power and asks him to wield his sword with justice. Golden energy enters Arata's sword, and this energy transforms his sword, raising it to level 2. He immediately releases his power, and golden energy begins to transform the entire prison, while everyone watches in awe. The people who were taken during the reckoning also return alive, and everyone is happy. At that moment, Kanagi arrives looking for Arata. He had seen the flash of light in the sky, and began to question the people about what happened. Suga's voice warns Arata of the danger, and tells him to leave. While he appears in a spectral form before Kanagi, Kanagi realizes that the old warden has been defeated, and Suga tells him that Arata is strong, as is his divine sword. He reveals that this is the sword of origin that will rule the world, and in the meantime, Ken and Jin take Arata to the boat they used to live on and use it to escape the island. On the other hand, Arata too is living a normal life. His family is worried about him, because a doctor diagnosed him with temporary amnesia. His father says they should keep him out of school for a few days, but his mother is completely against it. She says they should be wise and brave so they can understand and support their son. At that moment, Arata also comes down the stairs, saying that his body is stiff because he hasn't hunted any wild beasts for a while. Everyone is startled, but his parents try to act like they know what he's talking about. Arata's sister, however, is fed up with this idle chatter, and back in the fantasy world, Ken returns to his homeland, still thinking about Suga's words that Arata has the sword of origin, and his group barely manages to land on an island. After all, their boat broke down halfway there. They check the maps, and Ken says that they are far from the capital, and that to get there they need to cross the dangerous territory of Kenag. Arata is curious about this, so Cotter explains that the 12 guardians are rulers of 12 domains of the kingdom, and without the princess to rule them, they are returning to their territories. Suddenly they see smoke in the distance, and follow it to find some common people camping in the forest. Jin recognizes them as the people of his village, and runs towards them. They also recognize him, and Jin tells everyone that it is safe to leave now. At that moment, his mother comes out of her tent, and is very emotional to see her son back. They hug each other, and then Ken and the others also arrive at the place. Jin tells his mother how Ken saved him, and she thanks him. He replies that it was nothing big, but he is already sad about losing Jin now. Meanwhile, Arata talks to the villagers, and learns that a war may break out soon, because the 12 guardians are back to rule in their own territory, and they are all ambitious to gain more power, which is why the villagers are fleeing to places far from the fighting. Arata wonders what will happen now, and Ken tells him that one of the 12 guardians will rise to the top and become the king. He says that in the past, the 12 guardians also used to shelter all the time, but the princess suppressed them and brought peace to the entire kingdom. Soon Jin and the villagers leave, and Arata and his friends go to say goodbye. They arrive at a waterfall that almost disappears every month, opening the entrance to a secret passage. The villagers leave, wishing Arata and Konoha all the best in their lives, and Jin also bids farewell to Arata and Konoha, and then tells Ken to go with him. However, Ken doesn't go with him, and as the flow of the waterfall changes, Jin's mother takes her son away. Jin wonders what is happening, but then Ken smiles, telling him to live happily with his mother until they meet again later, and the waterfall returns to its full strength. Arata asks Ken why he did this, and he replies that it was his gang that kidnapped Jin, so he has no right to be with his family. He tells Arata and Konoha to go on their way, because right now all he wants is to be alone. However, Arata just grabs his hand and tells him that he will go with them. Although somewhat reluctant, Ken decides to go with them. During the journey, Arata quickly gets tired, and when the group decides to take a break, they see a huge monster that scares them. It roars loudly and starts chasing them. They run and stumble, and a furious monster runs over them without realizing that they were underneath it. When Arata and his friends are safe, they see a movement in the bushes and find a girl holding the egg of the monster they just saw. The monster finds them again, and everyone runs away. Ken is the last to react, and so the monster chases him while everyone else gets to safety. Arata and Konoha ask a girl named Rino why she stole the monster's egg, as it could be dangerous, and she answers that her boss is expecting a baby, so she wanted to give her a giant egg to feed on. Suddenly, the baby monster inside the egg hatches, and Rino is disappointed that she can't do anything about it now. At At that moment, Reno's master, Rika, appears on a strange path, and Ken is right behind him. Ken says that this man saved him, and just as Arata thanks Rika, he gets a high fever and passes out. When Arata wakes up, he finds himself in Rika's house, with Ken by his side. Rika's wife arrives with a change of clothes, and is relieved to see that Arata is awake. After that, Arata checks his belongings and finds his smartphone among them. He immediately examines it, while trying to hide the phone from Ken, as if the boy knew what a phone was. Arata turns on the phone, and fortunately it is still working, and the last message on it is from Suguru, his new friend who betrayed him in the end. Arata is a little sad for a moment, but then Ken remembers something important. He tells Arata that the person called Rika is actually a servant of Kanagi. If he finds out his true identity, they could be in trouble, and Arata is terrified to hear this. At that moment, Rika enters the room with a divine sword in his hand. He uses his power to repair Ken's damaged spear, and upon seeing the shocked Arata, he tells him that not all divine weapons are used for destruction. He then says that he also does not like war, and that thanks to Kanagi being a kind ruler, his nation is quite prosperous. At the same time, Kanagi is back home and visits the grave of a person very dear to him. He promises her that he will become the king and take the throne for her. But at that moment, a soldier comes running to him with news that one of his closest servants has been attacked. Kanagi rushes there and finds everyone in the house massacred. He learns from his servant that Akashi has attacked them. Kanagi is deeply shaken by this news, as Akashi was one of his closest friends. He learns that other servants are also being attacked, and so he decides to go to them quickly, but all of them have been killed, except for Rika. Kanagi decides to rush to Rika's village, to at least save him. Back in the village, everything is peaceful, and Rika has heard that war is coming, but he will not participate in it because he does not like bloodshed. Arata comments that it is stupid to kill each other, but Rika tells him that it is not necessary to kill each other to become the king. He explains that if someone can make the other chosen warriors submit to him, that person can unite all the divine weapons and become king without shedding blood. Arata realizes that this is what Suga did, and coincidentally, Rika has also heard about it. Arata is now at his limit, fearing that his secret has been discovered. Rika says that the person who murdered the princess was also a chosen one and that he escaped from prison. He states that if the news that he made Suga surrender is true, it was probably not that man who killed the princess. He explains that Suga's divine weapon, the Samiwa, can see the true nature of anyone, so he will not submit to a criminal. Rika then turns around, implying that he knows that Arata is the person in question. But before anything can happen, the servant tells Rika that there is a guest waiting for him. Later, the maid Reno arranges for Arata and his group to leave immediately, because the guest in her house at the moment is Akashi. Regardless of the danger, Arata and the others sneak into the meeting room, where they overhear Akashi telling Rika that Kanagi was the one who killed the princess. He blames everything on Kanagi, saying that he was the mastermind behind the murder and is only using Arata to distract everyone. He then finally gets to the crux of the matter and tells Rika to become his servant instead of becoming a murderer. Rika replies that he does not believe what Akashi says. Even if he told the truth, he is loyal to Kanagi and will follow him regardless of his sin. In response, Akashi draws his divine spear and stabs it into the ground, creating spikes of earth. The spikes do not harm Rika, but they do take his pregnant wife hostage. Rika asks Akashi why he is doing this, since he does not need his help to become king. Akashi responds by saying that he is doing this because he wants all the divine weapons, and says that he has already taken the weapons of the other 6 servants of Kanagi. Akashi then asks Rika if he will surrender peacefully or if he will let his wife die. Arata is horrified to see how low Akashi will go to achieve his goal. He is about to draw his weapon, but Rika notices this and declares that he will surrender. However, he wants Akashi to promise that he will not harm his wife, or even his guest. He promises this, and so Rika draws his weapon and submits to Akashi and his superior divine weapon. His body transforms into energy and enters the sword, and then he goes for Akashi's divine weapon. Rika's wife cries as she realizes that she has lost her husband, and everyone else is also hit. At that moment, 2 servants come running after hearing the loud noises, and Akashi kills them without batting an eyelid. Rika's wife begs him to at least spare her, but he kills her mercilessly as well. Arata becomes furious and compares Akashi to a demon. Suddenly, the curtain opens when Akashi smells everyone behind her. He is about to attack Arata as well, when suddenly Kannagi appears. He is devastated by the scene of carnage, and asks Akashi how he could do such a thing. Akashi replies that the war to become king has already begun, and that he will stop at nothing until he conquers the throne. Enraged, Kannagi uses his fire attack against Akashi, who blocks it with his stone wall. The next moment, Kannagi jumps on top of him and attacks him again, but Akashi manages to block this attack. He then sends stone spikes towards Kannagi, who can only dodge. He narrowly avoids being hit, but his ship is damaged. Akashi attacks him with more spikes, and Kannagi is now completely surrounded. Then he is attacked with a hail of rocks, and when Kannagi tries to defend himself with a wall of fire, Akashi attacks him from behind. They fall to the ground, and the clash of their weapons releases a powerful shockwave that shakes the entire place. Arata and his friends are thrown away, but he activates his barrier ability to make them land safely. On the other side, Kannagi is consumed by his rage. He demands that Akashi tell him why he did this, and Akashi reminds him of his old friend Amy, who loved Kannagi but died because of him. Kannagi is shaken by his words and immediately drops his weapon and goes towards Akashi. Akashi stabs the ground and creates stone replicas of Kannagi's servant's divine weapon. He declares that he has taken them all and that he will now take Kannagi's sword. His sword sinks into the ground. Then Kannagi responds by throwing his hands at Akashi, who has been his friend since childhood. They used to train together, but Akashi was always stronger, and because of that he was able to stop Kannagi's attack with ease as always. He pulls him closer and accuses him of betraying everyone else first. He pushes him away and starts beating him with earth whips, saying that he will not kill so that he can live with the shame and pain of his failure. Despite all the evil deeds Kannagi has committed, Arata feels sorry for him when he sees him like this. He tells Akashi to stop, as it is shameful to see a warrior beating an unarmed man. Akashi knows that Arata is also a chosen one, and asks him if he wants the throne too. Arata replies that there is no point in becoming a king if he has to kill innocent people to get to the throne. Akashi mocks him, saying that there is no place for such lofty and useless ideals in this world. He says that for each chosen one with a divine weapon, there are only two options. Either they can submit to a more powerful person, or they can become stronger and make others submit to them. With that, Akashi tells Kannagi to suffer in his agony and leaves in a dust storm. Later, everyone is dejected, and Hino goes to Kannagi asking him to bring her beloved master back. She tells him that Ohika respected him more than anyone else in the world and believed that he could do anything. Kannagi controls his sadness and replies that it is not easy to bring Ohika back because his soul has become part of Akashi's weapon. Hina starts to cry and curses Kannagi and Akashi for ruining her happiness. Kannagi can only apologize to her and leave, but this time Arata stops him, asking why the hell he looks so depressed. He asks if he is unhappy because he lost his weapon, or because he lost the people who trusted him with all their hearts. Arata grabs his collar, asking if he never thought karma would come after him when he betrayed the princess. He tells Kannagi that he doesn't deserve to be sad now, and Kannagi slaps his hand away, telling Arata that he doesn't know anything. He claims that everyone was unfairly subjugated by Kikiri, and he couldn't miss the golden chance to kill her and free everyone's weapons. After saying this, he leaves, and then Hino curses Arata too, saying that she hates all chosen warriors, and thus another girl who generalizes everything is born. Arata has no idea what to say to her, and doesn't know what to do now. He leaves and is left alone, reflecting on Kikiri's request, and wonders if she wants him to join the fight to become king. At that moment, Konoha and Ken arrive, and they encourage Arata and tell him that he should fight as well. However, Arata is angry and frustrated at his weakness, as he could do nothing to save Ohika and his wife. He says that he wants to become strong so that Akashi will submit to him, but then states that if he does that, he will become just like Akashi. Ken tells Arata to stop acting like a coward. He knows that Arata has never fought anyone, and tells him that if he just wants to cry, he can stay home, because if he wants to get stronger, he will have to hurt others. Ken asks him to give up if he can't do it, but Arata refuses, saying that Kikiri has entrusted this important task to him. However, he wants to save the world without making others submit to him. Konoha reminds him that Tsuga didn't submit to him because he lost, but because he entrusted his power and goals to him. Suddenly, Arata gets the idea, but Konoha still has things to say. She says that in the past, Grandma used to tell stories about a legendary divine weapon that had no attacking abilities and only only defensive abilities. However, it was also the strongest of the divine sword. It was called Tsukuyo, the divine sword of origin, and Kadoha believes it is the same one that Arata possesses. She believes that by using the swords of origins, he can rule the world without fighting. When Arata calls out Tsukuyo's name, a blinding golden light is released from the sword, illuminating the entire area. Arata 2 is looking at photos of Arata 1 with his traitorous friend, Masado. Outside the house, his new friend Subaru is nervously wandering around. Arata also notices him and decides to find him. After scaring him, Arata asks Suguru who he is, and the nerd is saddened to think that Arata is angry because he overheard him talking to the bullies about how they were never friends. So he just returns the game that Arata lent him and runs away. The next day, Arata also goes to school, and after a long break, the first thing he does is greet Masado. Masado is shocked to see him like this, and Arata also asks him to tell him more about Arata, because they must be friends, since they have many photos together. Masado is confused, but suddenly, Arata's mother drags him to meet the principal. However, Masado is angry now, because he thinks Arata is messing with him. Later, two bullies call Arata to the rooftop, while Masado is waiting for him. He also asks Arata if he is faking amnesia, but he ignores him and runs to see the view from the rooftop. Masado is furious and asks who he thinks he is. Arata also asks him the same question, which makes Masado even more pissed off. Masado is very angry, and the other bullies also start cornering Arata. He then decides to leave, saying that he is not interested in being friends with someone who needs the help of an entire gang to intimidate a single person. Enraged, Masado attacks him, but Arata grabs his hand and knocks him down with a single kick. He comments that Masado is too arrogant for being so weak, and then says that he does not know what the deal with the original Arata is, but that as long as he is in this body, he will not let anyone humiliate Arata anymore. In the fantasy world, Arata and the others are talking by a river, when suddenly Konoha twists her ankle. Ken offers to carry her on his back, but she refuses and tries to walk with Arata's support. They rest in an abandoned hut, and Ken goes off to look for medicinal herbs. When Arata and Konoha are alone, she clings to him, saying that she is just a normal cave, that she needs to let her feelings show sometimes. Arata is confused, but realizes that Konoha doesn't want to sit on his lap, but rather on Arata 2's lap, so there's no point in approaching her, since she still doesn't believe that he's an Arata from a different world. He leaves and uses his lucky charm to communicate with Arata 2. They inform each other about the situation, and then Arata 1 asks Arata 2 how he feels about Konoha. He replies that they grew up together, and that he sees her as his beautiful little sister, and he believes that he must always protect her at all costs. Arata 1 believes that Konoha will be heartbroken if she finds out about this, so he only promises Arata 2 that he will protect Konoha in her place. After that, Arata 1 also tells him that he went to school today and made an annoying boy named Masado behave. Arata's mind races at the mention of Masado's name, but before they can talk further, the portal closes. Arata is still lost in his thoughts when out of nowhere Kanagi sneaks up behind him and strangles him. He tells Arata to hand over his divine sword of origins, but he refuses. Kanagi hits him and throws him to the ground, and suddenly, fire erupts around them. Arata is confused as to how Kanagi can use fire without his sword, and he replies that the fire here is due to a natural phenomenon. But even without his weapon, he is a chosen one and can manipulate it easily. Kanagi attacks Arata with his flames, and he summons his sword and activates its power to block the attack. The shield dissipates, and Kanagi asks Arata to hand over the sword, and he will spare him. He walks towards Arata, who cannot stop shaking, and Kanagi then asks why the legendary sword of origin chose a pathetic coward like him. He grabs the sword and is about to attack Arata, when Konoha comes running and tells him to stop. Suddenly Konoha is engulfed in flames, and Kanagi sees horrific flashbacks of his past. Arata runs towards her, but Konoha tells him not to come any closer. She tells him to leave her because he has more important things to do, but Arata dives into the fire, saying he swore to protect her. Upon seeing this, Kanagi's shoulder wound begins to hurt, and he drops his sword as he runs to save Arata and Konoha. With that, he loses consciousness and finds himself in his past. He was the son of the lord of the territory, and Akashi and the girl who died were his servants. They grew up together, with Akashi being Kanagi's training partner, and the girl being the one he loved. Then one day the lord died, and the servants rebelled to kill Kanagi. He then fled with his two friends, but Akashi stayed behind to stop the attackers. While he fought off the attackers, Kanagi took the girl onto a boat, and they went to a distant island, where they were found by a group of people, including the young Ohika. When Kanagi wakes up from his dream, he mistakes Kadoha for the girl from his past, so he decides to tell everyone the rest of his story, and says that the people who found them were very kind, and he decided to forget his past and live happily with the girl. However, one day he falls ill, and the girl goes to get medicinal herbs. Despite Ohika's warning that the natural flames in this area are very strong during this season, when Kanagi wakes up and sees the mountain in flames, he follows his intuition and runs up the mountain to save the girl. However, she is already surrounded by flames. He tries to save her, but the fire attacks him, causing him to injure his shoulder and throws him off the cliff. Somehow, he manages to get out, only to see Ame being burned to death. After that, Kanagi decides to kill himself because he feels that he has nothing left in life after losing her. However, upon hearing his cries, the fire god appeared before him in the form of a sword and welcomed him as its bearer. Kanagi tells Arata and the others that for him, his sword is that girl from the past, and that is why he wants her back at all costs. Thinking about his history and his best friend's betrayal, Arata feels sorry for Kanagi and tells him to join his group. He promises that they will recover his sword, and then they can change the kingdom together. Kanagi accepts his offer, and this news reaches the other members of the 12 Guardians. They prepare to act soon and to decide the fate of the kingdom. The war becomes even more intense. The 6 guardians are watching over the body of the princess, who somehow still remains alive, but they are certain that she will not be able to gather enough strength to return to life. However, they are still afraid, as they have heard that Arata has obtained Tsukuyo, the Sword of Origin. The 6 guardians fear that if Kikiri comes into contact with Tsukuyo, she will be revived, but one of them claims that this will not happen, and to make sure that this really doesn't happen, they go to the cursed forest, where the 2 Aratas have switched bodies. The 6 guardians know that the Arata they are facing is from another world, so they send one of their guardians to the forest to awaken a power that will help them defeat him. Meanwhile, in the real world, Masado is throwing a tantrum after getting beaten up by Arata. Afterwards, he fights with his father, who insults him for being mediocre at everything, complaining about having abandoned the track team after only one miserable defeat. When Masado retorts his father's words and calls him a corrupt councilman, his father gives him a good slap and says that his mother left him because he was a failure. At the same time, Arata also returns home and tells his mother that nothing special happened at school. After that, he goes to his room, but his sister stops him and asks him to talk to his mother more, because she has been very worried about his health. Arata can't do that either, because he has never had a mother in his life. Later, when he is wondering what the relationship between Arata and Masado is, he sees Arata's new friend, Suguru, walking around the house. As soon as he realizes he has been seen, Suguru runs away, but Arata manages to intercept him. He asks Suguru if they are friends, and the nerd thinks that he heard him telling the bullies that he is not his friend. He had no choice but to say those things, otherwise he would be bullied too. He starts crying, while apologizing to Arata too, who says that it doesn't matter because he is still his friend. This reminds him of Masado, and he asks Suguru to take him to his house. They arrive at a subway station, where Masado, already irritated, finds his friends making fun of him behind his back. When he approaches them, they ask if he wants to fight, but before anything can happen, Arata also arrives. He says that he will join Masado if a fight starts, all to balance things out, and the boys quickly disperse. Arata also asks Masado if he is okay, but this makes him angry because he did not want his help. He accuses Arata of always looking down on others, like the time he lost a race to him on purpose. But Arata does not know what he is talking about either. He is about to reveal that he is not the real Arata, when out of nowhere his mother arrives looking for him. She also slaps Arata for running away from home without informing her, and then she starts crying because she was worried about him. Seeing this breaks Masado's heart, who remembers his mother leaving the family after catching her husband cheating. He starts to stagger away, furious with everything and everyone. He blames Arata for everything, because his downfall began when Arata lost to him on purpose. He curses Arata and vows to kill him. At the same time, in the fantasy world, the tattooed guardian asks the forest to open the gate to the other world and take him to the person who hates Arata the most. Suddenly, he feels confused and finds himself floating in the air, and the guardian gives all the information he has about Arata to Masado through magic. With that, they switch places, and when Masado leaves the forest, he realizes that the Arata he was dealing with was a fake. He asks the 5 remaining masked guardians about Arata's location so he can kill him. Arata and his team are passing through a forest when suddenly the weather changes and it starts to rain. Kanagi, who is traveling with them, tells them that they are in the territory of the Yorinami, affectionately nicknamed Yoro. He explains that Yoro is one of the 12 guardians with the power to control water and cause rain. He looks like a woman, but is actually a man, and as they try to find shelter, Arata asks Kanagi about the powers and personalities of each of the remaining guardians. Kanagi refuses to tell him anything, because after all, they are still enemies. However, he reveals that the 12 guardians barely work together, and the 6 masked guardians are even stranger than the rest, because no one knows who they are or their power. At the same time, the 5 guardians take Masado to their headquarters and tell him how Arata became a chosen warrior and is now trying to become the king of this country. They tell him that only he can stop Arata because of the hatred he carries in his heart, but in order to defeat Arata, he must also become a chosen warrior. Masado doesn't understand anything, but he is ready to do whatever it takes to defeat Arata. The 5 guardians take him to the depths of the gate, where they open it, and he is taken to a room that contains the only weapon capable of defeating Arata. They tell him that the forbidden sacred weapon called Orachi, which is surrounded by the mummified remains of those who tried to obtain it, has been dormant since forever. But if someone hates the bearer of Tsukuyo enough, they will awaken the Orachi, and it will choose them. When Masado holds the sword called Orachi, it awakens, and all the chosen warriors feel a strange sensation, and Arata feels his sacred sword burn in his hand. The dark energy of the Arachi sword envelops Masado's body, and he struggles to bring it under his control. Suddenly, he finds himself in the domain of the terrible god sealed in the sword, who asks him to show his hatred. Masado tells Arachi to give him power so that he can destroy Arata, and the evil god agrees. He grants Masado his powers and chooses him as the warrior who will spread hatred and violence throughout the world. The next day, Masado walks towards Arata, who feels a sharp pain in his sword. He draws his sword and notices that it is reacting strangely, when suddenly Masado appears before him. Arata is stunned to see him, and asks his friend who has become his enemy what he is doing here. Masado simply removes the dark sword from his body, and then activates its power to send a dark blow towards Arata. Arata manages to react in time, and activates his sword's barrier ability to protect his body, but he is still very shaken by the events. Konoha asks Arata who the man in front of them is, and Arata asks Masado what he is doing in this world. Masado responds with another question, asking if Arata came to this world because he was afraid of him. They call Arata a spineless coward who has always been bullied without fighting back, and it's a shame that he has the strongest weapon in this world. Masado continues to insult Arata, who becomes gloomy and angry, telling Masado to shut up. Suddenly, the spark in his sword disappears, and it begins to release dark energy. Everyone is shocked that even the Sword of Origin has begun to deviate to the dark side, and then Arata fires a powerful dark blast at Masado. And despite using his sword to protect himself, Masado takes some damage, but Arata is not done yet. He says that he will make Masado pay for everything he has put him through, and the dark energy begins to overflow from his body, transforming him into a true demon. Kanagi says that Arata needs to be stopped before he becomes a true demon. Konoha runs to Arata and hugs him without worrying about his safety. She asks Arata not to become a demon, because she believes he is the kindest man in the world. Hearing her words, the energy finally dissipates, and Arata comes to his senses. Konoha loses consciousness after this, and Ken rushes to her side. Masado is about to attack Arata once more, but the 5 guardians appear and tell him to retreat for now, otherwise the anime will end here. In fact, they did not know that even a divine weapon could turn its user into a demon, and so they decided that it would be better for Masado to awaken the full power of the Arachi sword. Before fighting Arata again, Masado takes one last look at Arata, and Kanagi realizes that the 6 guardians are now his enemies. Arata is now heartbroken and too embarrassed to realize it, so he ends up dropping his sword. Kanagi takes this chance and immediately grabs his sword. He runs off with it, and Ken chases after him to retrieve the sword. It is after this that Arata notices Konoha unconscious on the ground. He frantically calls out to her, and she wakes up relieved that Arata is still normal. They take shelter in an abandoned cabin, where Arata is feeling guilty for hurting Konoha. She then asks about Masado and what he meant when he talked about the other world. She tries to hold his hand, but Arata hesitates and pulls her back, and Kadoha finally realizes that he is not the boy she grew up with. Arata tells her again that he switched bodies with Arata. After Arata too went to the cursed forest. He tells Kadoha that when he tried to tell her the truth, she didn't believe him, and after that he didn't have time to talk about it again. He still apologizes, but Kadoha is too upset because she only now realized that the real Arata is not with her. Arata-1 assures him that Arata-2 is living a safe life in the modern world. Yakanoha then asks who was the man who made him turn into a demon before, and Arata replies that Masado is someone who hates him. He tells her how Masado and his friends bullied him every day in middle school, and because he was a coward, he couldn't fight back. Arata states that he never wanted to have a power that could be used to harm others, but now he has it. With that, he leaves to clear his mind, and at the same time, Oken encounters Kanagi. He tries to attack him and take Arata's sword back, but Kanagi tells him that he will return alone. They return and find Arata fallen. Kanagi asks if he won't take his sword back, and when Arata shows no reaction, Kanagi pins him against a tree and imposes the sword next to him. Arata asks if he doesn't want his sword now, and Kanagi replies that his divine sword is too heavy, and only Arata can impose it due to the great responsibilities. The next day, Arata returns to his training with Ken, and now he is more focused. Suddenly, Kanagi decides to serve as a training partner. He checks Ken's weapon to lower Arata's guard, and suddenly attacks him by surprise. All Arata can do is block his attacks, and when Kanagi pushes him to the limit, he tells him that the man he fought yesterday was with the 6 Guardians, and that he will surely keep coming for him. He says that Arata is too weak to face him now, and at this rate, he won't be able to protect himself. Kanagi disarms Arata, and then tells him that he is not ready to use his divine weapon yet. He tells him to find the divine sword before sunset, to prove that he is ready for whatever it takes. Otherwise, the group will disband. Frustrated, Arata ventures into the forest below, and finds a huge wolf holding his sword. The wolf runs away, and Arata gives chase. He continues running after the wolf, when suddenly he has a vision of Masado running alongside him. Masado used to tell Arata that running with him was the best part of his life. Yu encourages him to keep running with his eyes forward. As he comes out of his flashback, he sees that the wolf has stopped. He begins to think about how Masado was his best friend, and that he still wants to understand him. After this, he returns to the group with a sword, and Kanagi agrees to give him another chance. Arata then goes to Konoha and tells her that he will do his best to become stronger, and not become a demon the next time he faces Masado. She gets emotional, cries, and decides to support him even though he is not Arata too, and Arata suddenly hugs her to thank her for everything. Meanwhile, Masado wakes up from his sleep with a maid named Mia by his side. He gets annoyed by her excessive cheerfulness and her clumsy personality and tells her to leave. Later, as he is looking at the sunset, he curses Arata. Mia comes to him and asks him about Arata, and Masado says that Arata is the person he hates the most. But after listening to his speech, Mia says that Masado really likes Arata because Arata is currently living in his head without even paying rent. Masado is furious about this and almost attacks the maid, saying that Arata has ruined his life. He tells her about his story, about when his performance dropped due to problems with his family. He asked Arata to race with him so he could motivate himself, but at the end of the lap, Arata slowed down so that they could tie. This hurt Masado's ego because he wanted to lose honestly to his friend. Because of this, he grabbed Arata's collar, accusing him of slowing down on purpose because he felt sorry for him. After that, Masado started to believe that Arata was never his friend, which is the shittiest reason I've ever seen for someone to break off a friendship. In the end, Masado has always been a piece of shit. To make matters worse, Masado started to hate Arata, believing that his friend had always looked down on him, and now he plans to get revenge on him. Soon after, Arata and his group arrive at a patch of forest with many butterflies, and they don't realize that the bright blue butterfly among them is a spy. He is watching Arata from his palace, and all of his servants kneel before him, while a very old human being is trapped in a bubble of water. His servants beg Yoro to have mercy on the old man, but he says that he must be punished because he failed in the simple mission of taking control of all the salt trade in the kingdom. Yoro doesn't care if the people suffer because of this, because he needs to monopolize the salt trade and become stronger than the other chosen warriors. He finally finally frees the old man from the water prison and warns everyone that if they want to serve him, they must do his bidding perfectly. Meanwhile, Kannagi is leading Arata and the others to Yoro's territory, but Arata says that he doesn't want to meet with him right now. He claims he has no intention of fighting Yoro before knowing what kind of person he is, and so he wants to get to know his closest servants first. Konoha immediately agrees with Arata's idea and acts all friendly towards him, and Ken asks what has changed between the two. Arata then asks Kannagi about the nearest town, and they immediately set off for it. They arrive at the richest town in the entire kingdom, which is ruled by one of Yoro's servants. They are stopped right at the gate because they don't have enough money to pay the entrance tax, and as the gatekeeper starts looking for ways to earn money, a man named Sui appears and takes them inside. He gives everyone a tour of the town, and Konoha sees some nice hairpins. However, they have no money, and Sui tells them to work so they can pay the entrance tax, and then they can spend the remaining money on shopping. The men are sent to a mine to dig and carry rock, while Konoha goes to the laundry, and seeing that Sui is in charge of organizing everyone, Arata comes to believe that Sui must be the closest way to get to one of Yoro's servants. During the night, he asks a shopkeeper about Yoro, but he has never seen him in town. He tries to sell some things to Arata, who decides to buy the hairpin that Konoha wanted. At that moment, Sui arrives at the place, and later Arata asks him if he has ever met Yoro. Sui tells him that Yoro is a noble and wise man, and that he is currently striving for perfection in everything he does. He reveals that Yoro created the laws of this town, which made it the most prosperous place in the entire kingdom. The next day, when Arata and Gen are working in the mine, they suddenly see the boss being punished for breaking a carriage. Arata and Gen come to support him and see that the other workers have damaged the carriage in order to blame the boy. The boss refuses to listen to reason and fires the boy, canceling all his work with a huge repair fee. Gen is fed up with this and is about to beat up the boss until Sui arrives and stops them. After that, Arata and the others go to the house of the boy who lives in the hidden slum, along with other poor people. He explains that his parents were cloth merchants, but when they fell ill and died, their shop failed and he was thrown into the slum. Furthermore, the boss who just fired him used to be a head employee at his parents' cloth shop. Arata and Gen are furious at this injustice, and later learn that the boy can't even leave the city because the exit fee is too high. Arata thinks it's completely wrong for Arata to call this place a perfect city, and Kannagi tells him that it's just about dragging others down to get to the top. Sui is listening to everything outside the hut, and Kannagi goes to confront him. Sui knows who Kannagi is, and asks Kannagi and Gen what they are doing with a random guy like Kanata. But Kannagi tells him not to underestimate him. Inside the house, Gen makes some soup for the boy, who gets emotional when he tastes it. He thanks Arata and Gen for supporting him when he wanted to simply disappear from this world. Arata is shocked to hear this, because these words remind him of himself in the past. He manages to convince the boy that it is not worth running away from the world, because you feel alone and pathetic, and you have to keep trying to achieve better things. The boy says that he just wants to get out of the city, and Arata tells him that they will help him get out. At this moment, Konoha and Ken also arrive at the place and say that they are ready to help the boy. At night, they reach the gates and knock out the guards. They are about to flee when suddenly Sui arrives. Ken asks him to let them go, but Sui refuses to do so and pulls out a sacred sword from his chest. He introduces himself as the master of this city, and he is Yoro's #1 servant. Arata also draws his sword and tells Sui that this city is not perfect. He says that the city has no heart, just like Yoro, and these words remind Sui of his first encounter with his master. At the time, he had attacked Yoro when he realized that everyone was trying to get close to him only for his money. He expected Yoro to finish them off, but instead, he gave him hope and asked him to become his servant. Suddenly, Sui comes out of his flashback and attacks Arata with his ability, which is simply to throw a bunch of coins at his opponent. Arata manages to block it, and soon after Sui says that he was watching Arata on Yoro's orders and saw him fighting and overcoming the challenges he faced. Sui tells Arata that he believes in him, and at that moment a butterfly stinging Yoro begins to come near him. Sui just smiles, while telling the boy that he doesn't need to leave the city because he will challenge Yoro, with the goal of transforming this city into a more humane place. He then asks Arata to turn Yoro into the kind person he once was, as he is the only one who can do so. On the other hand, the 5 guardians tell Masado that he needs to meet another person who came from Earth to this world world so that he can become more powerful. They show him images of stone spikes piercing men and a pile of bodies, and then reveal that this is the power of Akat, who also came here from another world. When they reach Akat's territory, he attacks the ship and tells them to leave. The ship is about to retreat, but Masado gets off to talk to Akat. He uses the power of his sword to land safely and asks Akat to join him so that they can defeat Arata and Kannagi together. Akat isn't interested in losers like him and starts to walk away, but Masado throws a tantrum, saying that he only wants to defeat Arata at any cost. Otherwise, there would be no point in him coming here. Akat finally gives him some attention and suddenly comes up to him with his spear pointed at his face. Akat tells him that he is too soft and weak to defeat Arata and stabs him in the eye to give him a sense of loss. He then tells Masado that the more they lose their way, the stronger they become, and Masado was willing to lose everything if it meant he could defeat Arata, and to honor his determination, Akat accepts him as a student and even gives him back his eye. On the other side, Kannagi takes the group to Yoro's palace, which is on a small island and has a strange ball of water floating around. Inside the palace, Yoro greets his mother, who is trapped in a ball of water, and tells her that once he obtains the divine sword Sakuyo, he will be just one step away from becoming king, and then perhaps she will be proud of him. Outside the palace, Arata and Konoha wait for Ken and Kannagi, who have gone on a reconnaissance mission. Arata is about to present Konoha with a hairpin he bought when she suddenly starts talking about how much he must want to go home. She tells him that he must have family and friends in his world, and that she will take care of him on their behalf until it is time for him to return. After that, she runs off without listening to what Arata has to say, and he takes the hairpin he was unable to give her. He finally realizes that he had stopped thinking about returning to his world ever since he promised the princess that he would save this world. As he is lost in thought about his uncertain future, he suddenly hears Konoha screaming and runs towards her. He finds a tentacle of water grabbing his leg, and when he draws his divine sword, more tentacles attack Konoha and trap her in a ball of water. She is dragged into the sea, and Arata can only scream her name, while Ken and Kannagi return. Kannagi says that this is Yoro's power, and Arata immediately runs to his palace to save Konoha. The gates of the palace are open, and there are no guards to stop Arata from entering and finding Konoha trapped and tied up. Suddenly, the bubble she is in begins to fill with water, and Arata draws his sword to free her. He uses his sword's ability to attack the bubble, but does no damage. At that moment, Yoro appears and greets Arata, saying that he does not have enough power to break his prison. Kannagi also goes there. Then Yoro mocks Kannagi for having his sacred sword stolen by Akatia. The water inside the bubble continues to rise, and Arata demands that Yoro free Konoha. He tells him that in order to do so, Kannagi must submit to him or surrender if he wants the girl to be freed. Arata calls him a coward, but Yoro claims that this is the most perfect way to subdue him and make his mother proud. He attacks him with a wave of water, and Arata blocks it with his barrier. Kannagi wants to help Konoha, but Yoro also blocks his path. All of his servants watch the fight, and Sui convinces everyone to support Arata because he is the only one who can turn Yoro into a kind person once again. Arata can only dodge Yoro's attacks, and when Sui helps him block an attack that was coming from his blind spot, it ends up making Yoro very angry, and he attacks his servant. Arata loses his concentration when he sees Konoha in trouble, so Yoro uses this opportunity to hit him with a water attack to trap him. Just as Arata is about to be submerged in the glowing green water, Sui realizes that Yoro is going to use his special move, which will end the battle instantly. Suddenly, a flying ship appears above them, and someone jumps out. The one who appears is Masado, and he has only come to help defeat Arata. He uses the power of his unholy sword to land in the palace, and begins searching for Arata. When he sees him drowning, he asks Yoro what he is doing with his enemy. Yoro replies that Arata is sleeping, and that he will surrender to him while they sleep. Masado cannot let anyone defeat Arata before him, so he attacks him, but Yoro blocks his attack and traps him in a water trap as well. He submerges Masado in the pool and then enters it to defeat the two boys. Inside the pool, Arata feels warm and safe, and suddenly he opens his eyes and finds himself in his home. His mother has prepared his favorite soup, but then she asks him about the oath of surrender. She tries to blackmail him into giving up his power to Yoro, but Arata refuses, seeing that he still has the will to fight. Yoro uses his power to make Arata even younger, changing his dream to a time when he was involved in a fight in elementary school. His mother tells him to give up and say the words that will end end his pain, but he still refuses to give up. Yoro goes back in time even further, but the younger Arata still doesn't give up, and fed up with Arata not listening to his own mother, Yoro decides to kill him. He reverses time to turn Arata into a baby, but suddenly Kotoha's voice begins to echo in Arata's mind, telling him to keep fighting. Suddenly Arata grows up to his normal age, and tells his mother that he needs to leave. He tells her that he has a girl he loves, and even in the artificial dream, his mother wishes him good luck. With that, Arata unleashes the full power of his sword, destroying Yoro's technique, as well as a giant ball of water above his palace with a bright golden light. With the golden dust falling from the sky, Arata descends to the ground with Kotoha in his arm. Everyone is amazed to see this, and when he lands safely, Kotoha opens her eye. Yoro emerges from the pool, furious at the fact that Arata has broken his technique, and also at the fact that he refused to listen to his own mother. Arata replies that his mother would not tell him to give up, not even in his dream, and that he is free to do whatever he wants. Yoro tries to attack him, but his power does not activate, because his divine weapon has lost its will to fight. Suddenly, Yoro realizes a terrible fact. He runs to the room where his mother is kept, but the ball of water she was trapped in explodes, leaving only an empty set of clothes behind. Yoro has a breakdown after losing his mother, but Sui tells everyone that his real mother died a long time ago, and that this is just an illusion he created for himself. Yoro's mother never showed him any affection, and always scolded him to be perfect in everything. He worked hard hoping that she would praise him one day, but even after he became one of the 12 guardians, she didn't change. She passed away soon after, and Yoro thought that if he became the king, she would finally recognize him. But now he has failed miserably at everything. Suddenly, Kanagi approaches a small box on a stand, and Yoro tells him not to touch it, because it is the gift his mother gave him shortly before she died. Kanagi asks what is inside, and Yoro replies that he never dared to open it, because he thought it was not worthy of him yet. Everyone tells him to look inside the box, as there may be a message for him, and Yoro complies. He opens the box and finds a poorly made necklace that he had made for his mother when he was a child, and she refused to accept it, saying that it was a waste of time for her and him. Yoro is shocked, and then his former servant tells him that his mother's strict attitude was always for his own good. She knew that Yoro was a spoiled and kind boy who did not know the challenges of the real world. He had already lost his father, so his mother took it upon herself to prepare him for the future, acting very firmly. When Yoro realizes the truth, he begins to cry, and finally realizes that he had lost his way. He apologizes to his servants for all the mistakes he has made, and thanks Arata for making him realize this. He asks him what he thinks is the most important thing in this world, and Arata answers that it is the bonds they create with others. Yoro is satisfied with the answer, and at that moment Masado arrives, and is not happy to hear about bonds from Arata's mouth. He tells him that he does not need any human relationship, and so he will crush and kill him right here. He tells Arata that he is the same way, as he hates him enough to turn into a demon. Arata shudders at this, and Masado tells him to turn into a demon again so they can fight. Arata declares that he will never become a demon again, and swears that he will change Masado's heart. Masado replies that he will not be changed by someone as weak as him, and then points his gun at Arata. His Orochi sword suddenly evolves and becomes stronger, and Arata has no choice but to draw his gun as well. Masado attacks him, and the clash of their swords completely destroys the room they were in. Arata takes advantage of the smoke and runs away, but Masado chases him. He attacks with the elongated blades of his sword, which Arata only manages to dodge. Kotoha is worried about him, as she remembers how Arata turned into a demon the last time he fought Masado. She asks Kanagi to help him, but he refuses, saying that this is a battle that Arata must fight alone. She turns to Ken, but he agrees with Kanagi, and adds that he will not help at all. However, he tells Kotoha to believe in Arata, as he will not turn into a demon and will still win. On the other hand, Arata is constantly being pushed back by Masado's shape-shifting sword and relentless attacks. He activates his sword's barrier to block the attacks, and Masado tells him to stop hiding like a coward and attack him. He says that this is a battle of submission, and Arata replies that he does not want to make anyone submit. Suddenly, Ken cheers for Arata, telling him to fight back. Otherwise, he will not be able to save Princess Akikir. Suddenly, Arata realizes that he needs to live up to the trust that the princess has placed in him. Kotoha also arrives at the scene and tells Arata that everyone trusts him. He remembers the faces of all his his friends and becomes determined to see the fight through to the end. However, Masado tells him that belief is useless, and he quickly releases more dark power from his sword. Darkness begins to take over Arata, and he has no way to defeat his friend due to the defensive abilities of his sword. Everyone thinks he is in trouble because his sword has no offensive abilities. At that moment, Yoro decides to help him, submitting himself to him, using all the powers and abilities of his weapon. His servants try to stop him, but Yoro says that supporting Arata at this moment is a greater act than becoming king, and that perhaps his mother will be proud of him for doing so. Not even Arata wants him to submit to him, but Yoro has already made up his mind and tells Arata to change the world for his own good as well. As Yoro begins to swear the oath of submission, Arata tells him to stop, but Kanaka tells him to stop being a coward. He says that Yoro is entrusting his life, his power, and his dreams to him, and that he should be a man and continue moving forward with this new power. Yoro then completes the oath of submission, and his body transforms into golden energy to enter Arata's sword. Arata then has an explosion of emotions and energy that destroys the entire palace. After this, we see Arata and Masado facing each other, and he finally asks Masado why he wants to fight him so much. Masado remembers their past and tells Arata that he wants to defeat him at all costs, while he is still at his best. Arata asks if Masado is not satisfied with having bullied him over the years, but Masado tells him that he is too stupid to understand the truth. Suddenly, he attacks Arata with blades, but Arata transforms his sword into Yoro's weapon and deflects Masado's attacks with jets of water. Masado tries to attack again, but Arata keeps deflecting his blades, and seeing that Arata is finally taking the fight seriously, Masado decides that this is his chance to defeat him properly. He uses his blades to launch himself into the air and then attacks Arata. The two call upon the power of their divine swords, and Arata says that he fights for the good of everyone now, so he will not lose. He pushes Masado away and releases the full power of his sword, which begins to glow and restore itself. Suddenly, the entire ground begins to shake, and huge stone pillars rise from the sea. Everyone is amazed by Arata's power, and even Masado is left speechless. Arata declares that for the sake of his friends in this world, he will fight with all his might. He raises his sword, creating a golden barrier and a set of ethereal wings made of pure energy around him. Everyone is astonished to see this, because Arata has finally activated the full power of his weapon. He swings his sword, and a huge blast of energy is sent towards Masado, who declares that he will not give up on his dream, and that he will surely defeat him one day. He tells Arata that next time he will defeat him, and then he is blown away by the tremendous amount of energy. And as Arata savors his victory, he suddenly feels like the time he ran with Masado in middle school, not feeling at all like he is in a life or death battle, but rather a friendly battle. He then sits down and thanks Tsukuyo for giving him her power. Suddenly, Kotoha climbs up onto a platform and talks to Arata, saying that she is relieved that he came out unharmed. Arata takes the opportunity to give her the hairpin he bought for her, and she is happy to receive it. After that, Arata meets Yoro's servants, who have decided to follow their master's example and submit to Arata as well. He asks if they are sure, and they all tell him that they want to give him their powers so that he can change the world. With that, all the servants submit to Arata and become part of his force. After absorbing their energy and life force, Arata declares that he will continue to prove that everyone was right by placing their trust in him. Thus ends Arata's legendary anime. Want to see the sequel? Unfortunately, there isn't one. So, run to the manga and read it all. Simple. Anyway, a big kiss to everyone. Bye and see you in the next video. Bye.